Welcome back to Encyclopedia.zone. My name is Dr. Don Jolly. I am the editor-in-chief of the internet's premier home for literary shitposting, Encyclopedia.zone. Our latest issue, the Quarantine Fun Zone, featuring comics, poetry, short stories, and shitposts about the COVID-19 epidemic or about anything other than the COVID-19 epidemic, is available now. Check that out if you like. And if you like what we're doing here on the channel, like what we're doing here on the zone more generally, you can support us at patreon.com/HRC2020. Stay tuned to the end of this video and see the names of some of our very much appreciated and very beautiful and talented Patreon supporters. So, I don't know about you guys, but I've been seeing quite a few YouTube ads that have really gotten under my skin lately. You know, when this quarantine started, when the COVID-19 epidemic started, it took advertising a little while to catch up to it. Like, for a while there, you were actually getting advertisements that were just like people, you know, hanging out in bars, people, you know, in sporting arenas, stuff like that. Like, basically, the ads had not caught up to the world. And that, you know, now I look back with a certain amount of nostalgia for that early period of the quarantine, because now that the ads have caught up, we've got Bud Light showing empty baseball stadiums while they play We'll Meet Again, like the end of Dr. fucking Strangelove. And we've got stuff like this, which is an ad that I just saw. It is an ad for Walmart, and it's got one of the Walton family or some kind of executive, somebody who's in a leadership position in Walmart, turning to the camera, and it shows a bunch of, you know, saccharine cuts of the people in the little blue vests doing the Walmart grunt work. And he says, "I've always seen your passion." This is the owner of Walmart speaking in his, you know, unmistakable brogue. "I've always seen your passion. I've always seen your, you know, your spark. But now when I look at you, I see heroes." And isn't that something that we hear all the time now? Like, these essential workers are heroes. Like, oh, damn, they're heroes, dude. The people stocking the grocery shelves, they're heroes. And you know the nice thing about a hero? Joe Biden's podcast, I haven't listened to it, but, you know, he was talking about the heroism of the essential workers. He was saying, you know, you look at these people, this is a rough quotation. Like, once again, I'm not going to listen to Joe Biden's podcast. There's only so many hours in the day, but I saw somebody, you know, write up this section. You know, you see these people, they're out there, they're working minimum wage, they're making no money. It just makes you proud to be an American. Of course, what he means is they're making no money, and yet they're doing this essential service. They're selflessly sacrificing themselves for the body politic. But that's not what's going on. I have a buddy who's working at a grocery store right now, and he's the only person in his family who still has a job. He is supporting, you know, an entire family of people on $15 an hour, which is a temporarily raised emergency pay grade. It is, of course, also what Joe Biden wants to raise the minimum wage to. So, yeah, oh boy, thanks. $15 an hour. Really going to build a family on that. Really going to pay off your student loans on $15 an hour. And when I've even, like, I absorb, you know, meme pollution as much as anybody else. So I called my buddy who's working at a grocery store. And of course, I'm very thankful for the people that are working in grocery stores because, you know, I'm incredibly exposed. I'm dependent on them to stay alive. So I go up to my buddy and I'll be like, you know, well, not up to him, you know, personally. I go 6 feet away from my buddy and I wear a face mask. And I tell him, you know, like, well, I'm really, you know, proud that you're doing this thing. Thank you so much. I know you're putting yourself on the line. You know, you're a hero, dude. You're a hero. He says, nope. That's what my friend who works at a grocery store says. He says, I'm not a hero. I'm a slave. I'm a slave to capitalism, and I have no choice but to go in to work because it's the only way that money is going to get to a bunch of people who are depending on me. So we've really entered this zone right now where you got the Morlocks going into work in the virological plague nightmare apocalypse zone, exposing themselves to, you know, very serious health risks. And then you got the Eloy sitting at home reading New Yorker stories about the best kind of yoga that you can practice in your living room. And that's where we go. That's the world right now. That's America in 2020, is an absolutely stark world of haves and have-nots where You literally have to put your life on the line to work the worst jobs that exist in the country for, bare bones, fuck you up the ass levels of pay. But it's okay because they're heroes. So this has got me thinking about heroes as a topic more generally, and also the things that we're not covering, because so much time and attention is being taken up not just by reporting on COVID-19, but also reporting on the presidential election. I've been covering the presidential election to the exclusion of every other news story that has come across my feed for months now. I'm part of the problem. But there's a lot of much more important things going on than presidential election drama, the latest presidential election drama being that Joe Biden, the sexual assault allegations against him have gotten some serious momentum behind them in recent days because they've basically been corroborated by Tara Reade's neighbor at the time, or shortly after the period the assault took place, has come out to corroborate that she did talk about this back in the 90s. And also an episode of Larry King Live was unearthed and then removed from the Google Play Store, where Tara Reade's mother called in to ask Larry what her daughter should do because she was put in an uncomfortable position by a prominent senator who was not named on the episode. And all of this has produced some momentum behind the Tara Reade allegations against Joe Biden, which, I might do a video on that at some point in the future. Also, the New York primary has been suspended, last that I saw, but at the very least, Bernie Sanders' name has been taken off of it, despite the fact that he only suspended his campaign and did not want to take his name off of the ballots in states that were yet to vote, because Bernie's whole strategy going forward is to try and get as many delegates as he can possibly get going forward into the convention to try and exert force on the Democratic Party platform. You want to see how much anybody gives a shit about this approach and how much leverage the party platform is actually going to have on the people in the Democratic leadership. You can watch the video that I did about Bernie Sanders. Basically none. This is like nil. There's this hashtag coming up in the aftermath of the New York thing, which is Bernie come back. Like, as if this one guy re-entering the race ahead of the New York primary is going to somehow fix the major systematic problems that have been revealed in the United States national democracy, the national level of the United States democracy. That in its own way is a kind of craving for a hero. Presidential politics in general is about, appointing these symbolic heroes that do battle on our behalf for a variety of religious and sociocultural reasons. But there's a lot more actually going on. I would say that, these hashtags, allegations, whatever, anything going on with the election right now, this is not a big deal. This is a sheen. This is a brightly colored, explosive spectacular, which is taking away a lot of time and attention from some very important stories that have been left behind. The most important story that I think is getting short shift in the media today, although it's not like it's not being reported on at all, but it's certainly not front page news, and it definitely should be, is the extradition trial of Julian Assange. I'm recording this video on the 27th of April, and they have actually announced that the extradition trial has been delayed. There's going to be an additional hearing on May 4th where they're going to set a final date for the extradition trial because of the COVID-19 restrictions in England, which is where this trial is going to take place. Mr. Assange is not able to meet with his lawyers. The trial is not able to actually convene. And, a little bit of a white pill. They are not doing some kind of bizarre Skype trial, some kind of Running Man distance learning Zoom meeting, kangaroo court to force this thing through while everybody's attention is elsewhere. They are actually delaying it. We don't know exactly when the extradition trial is going to be held now. Once again, they're not going to make that determination until May 4th, which is next week, so we'll find out then, supposedly. But the date that I've seen floated is that there's a 3-week opening somewhere in November, which there's nothing going on in November that could distract from this incredibly important legal proceeding. So, you know, we're looking. I'm sure that it's going to get all the coverage it deserves, and I'm sure that everybody is going to be very well informed about the extradition trial of Julian Assange. I'm not going to give a exhaustive history of the Assange case, but Julian Assange is the publisher of WikiLeaks, which is a watchdog, publishes leaked documents from inside governments and corporations that have been provided to them. They are essentially a journalistic enterprise. They have been, you know, controversial in recent years because post-2016, they got wrapped up in the whole Russiagate thing. And in fact, when you see reporting on Assange in like the New York Times, for example, I've seen this in a number of stories, they say that with 100% certainty that WikiLeaks published the DNC emails that were obtained by Russian hackers. There's not a lot of proof that Russian hackers actually obtained those emails. You can read HRC 2020 Part 2 on Encyclopedia.zone, which is my last political column. I dive into some of the problems with that. And it's not just like me out here. Like, this is reporting that comes from The Nation. You know, there's a lot that's elided in the Russia story, and it's created this very anti-WikiLeaks sentiment on the part of the mainstream press. But the WikiLeaks, the charges that have been brought against Mr. Assange, that he's currently being extradited from England to the United States to face, have to do with the 2010 disclosures of basically United States military cables. I don't think it's actually related to the diplomatic cables. I think it's treasure trove of various military and diplomatic materials that were published in 2010 by WikiLeaks in cooperation with a number of different press outlets, including the New York Times. And basically, since those disclosures, Julian Assange has been living on the run. For the past 7 years, he's been he sought asylum and was granted asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, where the CIA made a deal. We now know from a Spanish court case that is ongoing. The CIA made a deal with the embassy's security. We made a deal with the embassy's security company, and was essentially, sorry about that, the CIA cut a deal with the security company at the Ecuadorian embassy to monitor Julian Assange's transmissions and his meetings with lawyers, which is, you know, incredibly dirty pool. But look, Julian Assange messed with the primal forces of nature. He pissed off the United States government, and he's fucked. He's very, very fucked. But there are some repercussions to the particular fucking that he's enjoying this year that I think are very important for anybody who is posting on the internet. So he was in the Ecuadorian embassy for 7 years. Last year, in April of 2019, he was actually removed from the protection of the Ecuadorian embassy, and he was indicted in England on a charge related to basically conspiracy to break into a protected government system. This was the first charge that was brought against him. This is why he was arrested in England. He was taken to, I believe, shortly thereafter, a prison which has been described as the Guantanamo Bay of England. He's been enduring incredibly bad conditions, and they've had some deleterious effects on his health. But about a month after that initial charge, which was, conspiracy to penetrate a government computer system, he was charged with 17 violations of the Espionage Act, which is a World War I era law designed to, excuse me, it's a World War I era law designed to prosecute enemy intelligence agents. And there's been a great increase in uses of the Espionage Act against government whistleblowers, against people in the government who leak material over the Bush administration, especially the Obama administration, which used the Espionage Act to go after whistleblowers legally more than every other administration combined in the history of the United States. I'm not sure what the Trump administration's numbers on that are, but in regards to Julian Assange, they're actually crossing a line that the Obama administration wouldn't even cross in regards to the Espionage Act, in that they are bringing these charges against someone who is performing a journalistic function. The contention of the government and against the contention of the Justice Department is that Julian Assange did not just publish these materials, but encouraged Chelsea Manning to obtain them, in which case he's encouraging, the breaking into a government system. Like there's some very nebulous distinction that the Justice Department is making here in regards to Julian Assange's specific crime that allows him to be prosecuted under the Espionage Act. But I think anybody who is looking at this from a reasonable perspective will say that the crime that he is being prosecuted for is the crime of publishing these true documents, which he obtained. He was performing a journalistic function in publishing them. And this is something that, the big problem with using the Espionage Act in this way is that it potentially opens any journalistic enterprise to prosecution as an enemy espionage agent for disclosing material that the government finds embarrassing. Now, John Demers, who is the head of the Justice Department's National Security Division, was quoted in the New York Times in May of 2019, sort of explaining the distinction and like how there is no First Amendment threat, no threat to the freedom of the press in the current charges that have been brought against Julian Assange. So what he said was, this is Mr. Demers, said, "Some say that Assange is a journalist and that he should be immune from prosecution for these actions. The department takes seriously the role of journalists in our democracy, and we thank you for it. It is not and has never been the department's policy to target them for reporting. Assange, however," he clarifies, "is no journalist. No responsible actor, journalist, or otherwise would purposefully publish the names of individuals that he or she knew to be confidential human sources in a war zone, exposing them to the gravest of dangers." Now, this brings up a couple of things. First of all, trying to determine whether Julian Assange is or is not a journalist implies that there is some special legal category for journalists, but journalists are not credentialed unless you want to say that the only official journalists are the ones that are employed by large corporate news gathering organizations. When the founders put down the Constitution, journalists were just private citizens with printing presses. The right to a free press is something that should belong to all of us, especially because, thanks to internet technology, all of us has essentially a printing press in our pocket. We have the ability to publish information and distribute it to a mass audience instantly. The idea that there is some special distinction between a human being and a journalist. I mean, Julian Assange is actually not even a citizen of the United States, which is another complicated thing here, is really perfidious and really dangerous. But the second part of it, and the thing that's really interesting to me, is he says that Julian Assange is not a responsible actor because Julian Assange published the names of individuals he knew to be confidential human sources in a war zone. This is the idea that Julian Assange had put the lives not just of American troops, but American intelligence assets in danger through his reporting, which kind of like it makes him sort of a violent criminal. And I'm interested to see how that plays out when we actually get to the eventual trial. I mean, if Julian Assange is extradited to the United States, I would assume that it would basically be a kangaroo court proceeding, where in which case the argument that they make could end up being very, very nebulous. And the precedent that is set would be extremely dangerous. Because once again, this is now, if you can prosecute somebody under the Espionage Act for publishing government secrets, for just publishing them, then nobody's safe. And, there's some stuff going on right now with the internet, especially 9chan publishing some material that governments and international organizations do not want distributed. This could be a whole legal kettle of fish for us going forward. So I'm really hoping that Assange does not get extradited. I'm hoping that we get a fair hearing in court. But, at the same time, I'm not crossing my fingers. The thing about the implication that Assange is putting intelligence assets at risk puts me in mind of another moment in American history when elements of the military-industrial complex, and especially the intelligence agencies, were being exposed to more sunlight than they would like. After Watergate, there was an upswing for a little while in this kind of like investigative journalism focused on the United States government, and especially focused on the intelligence agencies. And there were a number of revelations that came out that the CIA was using blowfish toxin, that the CIA was engaging in political assassinations, that the CIA was doing these clandestine projects to raise Russian nuclear subs from the bottom of the sea. That one, they actually got like some good press on that, the Glomar Explorer. Anyway, there was a period of intense scrutiny on the intelligence agencies and like shock and disbelief at some of the like really malignant actions that they were taking part in. And so there were efforts to create governmental committees and to push through in the press investigative reporting and potential for reform. There was a Senate committee, the Church Committee. There was a committee in the executive branch in the Ford administration. And then there was also in Congress the Otis Pike Committee that were all investigating the intelligence agencies and reassessing the idea of oversight for these intelligence agencies. But there was one thing that helped put them all to a stop. And that was the killing of a CIA agent named Richard Welch. So, like I said, there were a number of journalists and congressmen and senators that were engaged in investigating the intelligence community in the aftermath of Watergate, and this. Excuse me, I'm dying of COVID-19, but. Part of this was an organization called the Fifth Estate, which was founded by the writer Norman Mailer. And they were dedicated to exposing the CIA. They had a magazine called Counterspy, which would publish lists of known CIA agents and blow their cover, purposefully. In their winter 1975 issue, they revealed the name of the CIA station chief in Lima, Peru, which was Richard Welch. However, Welch was not in Peru at the time. He'd been transferred to Athens. It didn't take long for the Athens papers to pick up on him. His details were published, and on 23rd December 1975, as Welch was returning from a Christmas party, he was killed. This was taken by the federal government and by the intelligence community as a tremendous PR opportunity. Gerald Ford allowed him to be buried with full honors in Arlington National Cemetery. It was weeks and weeks of media coverage, and it was used, this production of this hero, this martyr, was used to help squelch the investigative and oversight capacities of both the Church and the Pike Committee, and to sort of put a stink of moral, to put a stink of toxicity on reporting on the intelligence agencies, as if the very act of reporting on these unaccountable entities in government was exposing American heroes to tremendous risk. So they're basically using this Richard Welch argument in regards to Julian Assange, by saying that his disclosures have placed he's placing people's lives in danger. Oh God, isn't he such a bad man? This is an old tactic. And if they really want to fuck him, then you just pull out and then you manufacture a name of a United States intelligence asset that was killed as a result of WikiLeaks reporting. But the sad thing is, I don't even think they need to do that, because so few people are paying attention to Assange's extradition or to the First Amendment issues that it raises. Assange doesn't have any friends on the American right because he, embarrassed us with the publication of these diplomatic cables and military secrets, footage of United States troops indiscriminately killing civilians in Iraq. He doesn't have any friends on the left because of the Russiagate thing. And so now, Glenn Greenwald is a good friend of Julian Assange. There's a number of reporters in Europe that are doing good coverage of this. And I'm actually going to link down below to a really excellent and very much underwatched live stream from the Defend Julian Assange campaign that actually features Daniel Ellsberg, who was the whistleblower who provided the Pentagon Papers in the early 1970s, blew the lid off the Vietnam War. So people aren't paying attention to it, though. Like, not on the level that they need to be. The aftermath of Julian Assange's public execution, the shot that echoes from that, has the potential to have a massive effect on the way that the internet deals with the leaking of state secrets and the accountability of posters on the internet who publish and republish those secrets. We need to be paying very close attention to it. Julian Assange needs to be as insulated as he can possibly be from the wrath of the intelligence community. And in comparison with things like that, I don't really give a shit who Joe Biden raped or didn't rape. Not to say that I don't care about Tara Reade in general. I'm just saying, like, look, the presidency right now, presidential politics, is like the least interesting thing that's going on. So you want to be a hero? Start looking at the stuff that they're not putting right on the front pages. Or get a job at a fucking grocery store and make $15 an hour providing me with Gouda Triscuits.